I call to order the regular Planning Commission meeting for the City of Woodinville for Wednesday, August 21, 2019. May we have the roll call, please?
Chair Stadler?
Here.
Vice Chair Yarboff? Commissioner Deschastil de Monterouge?
Here.
Commissioner Millman?
Here.
Commissioner Meza?
Here.
Commissioner Pirro? Commissioner Young?
We have been notified by Commissioners Pirro, Young, and Yarbrough that they would not be able to attend tonight. Would anybody care to make a motion to excuse them?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to excuse the three said commissioners.
I second it.
There's a motion and a second to excuse Commissioners Pirro, Young, and Yarbrough. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Abstain? All right. Will you please stand and join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes to the agenda in order and content from any of the commissioners? Seeing none, we have our agenda. Nice to see so many friendly faces in the audience tonight. It's not often that we do that, so that's great. Public comments. Is anybody signed in for public comment? Now, if you want to talk about the two items that we have a public hearing on, you'll sign up for the public hearing, not at public comments. You're welcome. If you do want to say something at public comment on that, you can as well. First person that is signed in is Fargadusi. Please come forward and state your name and whether you live within the city of Woodinville or not, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Fargadusi. I live in the city of Woodinville, resident here. And as a resident, I'm here to comment on the Westpoint project tonight. If the planning department and city council are interested in affordable housing within the city, I believe then the council should initiate and ask the planning commission to study affordable housing and how it can specifically tie in with future multifamily projects, development agreements, and government programs. The land value is too high in the city of Woodinville, and the construction costs are too high to make affordable housing financially and economically feasible. I believe we need creative and innovative ways to provide affordable housing. For example, one idea could be, since structured parking is very expensive and a large impediment to affordable housing, we need to reduce the number of parking requirements in exchange for affordable housing. Even though that may not work, since there may be inadequate public transit facility in the city, perhaps we need to integrate public transit improvements with affordable housing. One thing I want to point out is Council Member Bounty Sanders, for years, she understands this issue very well. She understands that structured parking is very costly, and it's a big problem in the city for affordable housing. In summary, I agree with Chairman Stadler that affordable housing will require a full study by the Planning Commission. I believe the study should be done with the participation and feedback from public, developers, city staff, government officials, and consultants. Additionally, I agree with the comments by the commissioners during the last Planning Commission meeting. Chairman Stadler, just to throw out affordable housing as an idea and not really knowing how it is defined, it's not a good way of planning. Commissioner Millman, he would like to include condominiums as a component of affordable housing, which should be included in the scope of the study commissioned by council. Commissioner Deschastil, he would like the city to study what the state legislature has passed and consider it for the city. Commissioner Deschastil, or it might have been another commissioner, I believe, made a comment. Mr. Buchanan wants to start with the housing strategy. That could be part of the scope of the Planning Commission. And Vice Chair Yarbrough, the city needs to start working on affordable housing. I agree with all of the comments the commissioners made. They should be included in the scope of Planning Commission Housing Affordability Study. If the city wants to put into the code providing housing affordability units with the residential FAR increase of 2.5, then let's put it in the code. It's not there right now. This study could result in potential policy changes that will facilitate and provide developers and the city with the right expectations upfront when they begin their project. My experience has been, as I am sure many commissioners would agree, to make a change without an adequate study and without having the right analytics is not a good idea, and doing it ad hoc is even worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gadusi. The next person that has signed up for public comment is Zach Zemke. Good evening, Mr. Zemke. Please state your name and whether you live within the city limits or not.
Yeah, my name is Zach Zemke, and I don't live in the city. But I appreciate the opportunity to address you tonight, and thank you to Commissioner Mesa for the invitation to speak. So I am co-chair of an organization called Shift Zero, which is an alliance of over 30 member organizations that are dedicated to decarbonizing the built environment. And you may know that over 40% of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States comes from our buildings currently. So from a climate perspective, buildings are currently part of the climate problem, but we know that they can be part of the solution as well, and that cost-effective zero-carbon buildings also bring many co-benefits like superior indoor air quality and health, great comfort, and reduced utility bills for occupants. So when it comes to green building certifications and kind of the smorgasbord of certifications that we have, this smorgasbord can be fairly confusing to policymakers, particularly ones who are interested in using green building certifications to help reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in their communities. So I'm here to offer Shift Zero, the alliance that I'm part of, as a resource to the Planning Commission and to the city. And we've developed a tool called the Zero Net Carbon Building Policy Toolkit. And it provides plug and play incentive policies to help cities reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from their buildings. And it does two important things. First, it clarifies which green building certifications make significant impacts on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So you know whether to focus on LEED Gold or LEED Platinum, Built Green 4-star or 5-star, Passive House, you name it. And secondly, it provides a menu of options of incentive policies that are tailored to different jurisdiction types. So we've got a menu for urban jurisdictions, one for suburban ones, and another for rural communities. So as you consider and kind of the question of buildings and the greenhouse gas emissions in the city of Woodinville, we'd be very happy to share more about the policy toolkit with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Zemke. Appreciate that. That is all the people that have signed up for public comment. Is there anybody additionally in the audience that would like to make public comment at this time? All right, our next item is Council Liaison Report. Councilmember Taylor.
Good evening. So, looks like you have a full docket tonight, lots to consider, but from the council last meeting, we approved 3.5 positions to help offset some of the backlog that we're seeing. So we have a new engineer position open to help us with capital projects. We've got another planner that's going to help Amanda with some of the schedules there, and a surface water position. So it's a brand new position to track and monitor the water that's the effluent from buildings and drains and whatnot, and a half-time position to help the maintenance department so that they can be out there cleaning up and working on the roads instead of replacing light bulbs in the building. So that's pretty much it. So we're trying to add people where there's a backlog, and then the expectation is that we're going to be able to start clearing some of the work that's there. So keep it up. Good job. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. Okay, now we will move on to the meaty session of our meeting tonight, our business and discussion items. The first item is the draft Planning Commission minutes of 17 July. Are there any corrections or additions, omissions from the minutes that need to be in there? If there are none, I will entertain a motion to approve the draft Planning Commission meeting minutes of 17 July.
I move to approve the meeting minutes as is.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the draft Planning Commission minutes of 17 July 2019. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Abstained? All right. We now will move into the public hearing portion. The first item is a public hearing on the Westpoint Mixed Use Development Agreement. And we need a motion to open the public hearing.
Sure. I move to open the public hearing for the proposed West Point Mixed-Use Development Agreement. Second.
There is a motion and a second to open the public hearing for the West Point Mixed Use Development Agreement. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Abstain? All right. Public hearing is open. Staff report?
Good evening. I'm Amanda Almgren, and this is the public hearing for the West Point Mixed Use Development Agreement. I think most of you, although not all of the planning commissioners, were here last week when we did a study session, so some of these slides are going to be very familiar, but can you hear okay? Okay. Yes, I will talk a little bit closer to the mic. You're welcome. So most of you, but not all of the planning commissioners, were here last week when we did a study session. So just to quickly go over some of the stuff we talked about. The location of the project is in what's considered or often referred to as Old Town Woodinville. So it's just City Hall. We're sitting right about here where my pointer is, and this project is across the Sammamish River and to the northeast corner of the city. So it's going to be where there's currently 5 properties. The Horseshoe Saloon is maybe the most well-known of those 5 properties, but they are, single and 2-story buildings with surface parking. The proposal covers 1.14 acre site that's and is being proposed to be redeveloped with mixed use, 161 multifamily residential units, just shy of 16,000 square feet of commercial space, and 8,551 square feet of office space, and then structured parking. So it's a pretty dense proposal for the site. The site plan, if you take a look at it, the site is bordered by Northeast Woodinville Drive on one side, 126th Place, and then 173rd Place. And so all of those have frontages. There's a parking garage that's going to be kind of hidden behind the storefronts on Northeast Woodinville Drive. And there's going to be 2 entrances for cars, one at the northeast end and then one at the further south end, and then one off of 173rd. But you won't be able to see most of this parking because it's all kind of built into the project and into the hillside. The benefits, as stated in the development agreement for this project, include a public transit facility, basically a bus stop, water feature, enhanced weather canopy, public open space, sidewalks on all 3 frontages, which currently I don't think there's sidewalks along any of those frontages. And then we've got the mixed use retail and office, which can facilitate employment opportunities, structured parking, like I talked about, inside the hill, and kind of surrounded by the building, and then a 5-foot wide dedication on 126th Place, and public art. I do want to note that most of these, if not all of these benefits, are required through the development regulations to either, the sidewalks are just a requirement of developing the site. Many of these other ones are either a requirement for getting to use FAR of 2.0 or getting to a height of 57 feet. And through this development agreement, the project will get to use an FAR of 2.5. So there is a little bit of a bump through the development agreement. It's just worth noting. I do want to just kind of highlight this public open space that's going to be on the northeast corner of the site. You can see it's built into a hillside here. There's a water feature that's going to come down these steps, a little plaza area, and then the bus stop's going to be there. So it's kind of a nice amenity, and I just wanted to highlight that for you guys. The current development agreement in front of you has a 10-year vesting for the project in it. The code does allow development agreements to be valid for up to 10 years, but a shorter term could be established if you feel it's appropriate. Another thing to note is the city allows development agreements to vest to impact fees through the development agreement. But again, it's not something we have to do. And it is kind of a question of, do we want to continue this practice now that there are school impact fees which impact a different jurisdiction than just us, locking somebody into our current impact fees for traffic and parks. So just things to think about. As we've talked about this, we've done a lot of development agreements lately, but just as a reminder, development agreements are a discretionary contract basically between the city council and the developer, and planning commission's role is to hold a public hearing and make a recommendation. So unlike some development projects where we have to look at, are we being fair? This is entirely discretionary. So it is the planning commission's role to think about the terms and the public benefits being provided and make recommendations to city council. So at the study session held on August 14th, generally the planning commission members were supportive of the project. There was a recommendation that I think most of the planning commission was at least interested in requiring about 17 dwelling units to be designated affordable, which would be about 10% of the total dwelling units in the project. The way, just for those who weren't here last week, the way we came to the number of 17 was through the development agreement, the project gets to use an residential FAR of 2.5 instead of 2. And that extra 0.5 amounts to roughly 35 dwelling units. And so I believe the thought was maybe half of those could be affordable housing. The Planning Commission did direct staff to bring back a little bit more information about what a definition of affordable housing could be. So I have that for you tonight. The multifamily tax exemption code that was adopted by council last summer defines affordable housing as housing that's reserved for occupancy by eligible households and affordable to those households. And that's based on annual income that meets the applicable percentage for King County median household income. And there's a table identified. And then no more than 30% of the monthly household income is paid for monthly housing expenses. And monthly housing expenses include things like rent, parking, appropriate utility allowances. If it's a owner-occupied situation, then it would be mortgage insurance, property taxes, kind of all of those basic things that you can't occupy the space without doing. So what I pulled up was the HUD table for median family income for King County for 2019, and these numbers are adjusted annually. It just kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking about and what we're looking at. So if an affordable unit was aimed at 80% median family income for a family of 4, the monthly housing expenses could not exceed $2,206. So it kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking about. If a unit was intended for very low, which is 50% of the median King County income for a family of 4, then the expenses couldn't exceed $1,383. So gives you a sense of it. So next steps, to take the public testimony for the public hearing and then forward a recommendation to City Council. And with that, I prepared some motions for you, but like, of course, we're going to hold the public hearing. When it comes to what your recommendation is, though, it's kind of wide open for whatever you feel is best. So, are there any questions?
Commissioner Duchatel.
Thank you. You said the last meeting we recommended 17. I don't recall. I mean, we asked about it. I'm not sure if we said we recommended that there should be 17, right?
I think it was a request from the commissioner.
To get more information.
Yeah, Broff. I don't think it was all. Do you want to jump in?
What was suggested was to look at those additional housing units, because remember we talked about the floor area ratio with the regular bonus is 2.0, and then going from 2.0 to 2.5 produces roughly about 35 units, and the suggestion at the meeting was 50% of that. So that's why we brought back an actual number for you to look at. And again, this is all part of your discussion. You don't have to follow this.
No, I just want, cool.
Yeah.
And Chair Sal, I have 3 questions. You want me to just ask them or go one by one?
Yeah, you can go ahead and ask all the questions.
One was, one feedback I got to talk to people is, while we do construction, I have some contingency about traffic and workers. Is that part of the development agreement, or is that just after that's negotiated? That's something important. It should be, that area is already dense in traffic, so if we had, during the construction, there should be some good attention to make, even though we have a newer bridge, that helps. So I don't know if does that go into development agreement, or is that further after that we negotiate to ensure that we take in consideration traffic during construction?
Are you just asking about like traffic control during construction?
Or ask the developer to make sure that there's it's like someone proposed they could rent space to put the workers parking so that it doesn't go on the street where there's already limited parking, have some ways to alleviate traffic jams in that area.
Yeah, we kind of work, I don't remember if we put that into the SEPA or not, but we do work through that through the site development permit.
Okay, so
one of the things
usually,
we are looking at is when the
that's what I
construction
thought.
permits are.
But yeah, certainly, I don't know if it needs to go in the development agreement, but if you have suggestions for that, that you heard from people, you can feel free to share so we can make sure that those are addressed when we work through that.
Cool. The second one was on page 3, section 6. The applicant proposed these benefits, and there's a table with 4 rows. It seems that the first 3 are for FAR, the 2 to 2.5, and the last one is for the height. So
Can you back up again and tell us again what page you're on?
Page 3 of the agreement. That's the one with the 2 tables, and then bullet number 6, there's a table of 4 items. Applicant is proposing the following public benefits as exceeding standard regulation. Like my understanding of the development agreement is basically the city is going in agreement saying, you'll do these extra stuff and we'll give you this extra. And there's 2 dimensions. There's the FAR, as you explained, and there's the height, right? Those are the 2?
So actually the FAR of 2.0 and the height of 57 feet, those are both things that are allowed in our code without a development agreement. So if you do these things, you can get this incentive. So what the development agreement is authorizing is to go from that 2.0 that the code allows to 2.5 FAR.
Okay, so the development agreement is 2, you get, so but they only list the public open space. Shouldn't that table also have parking? Is that the other requirement? This one here, right? Page number 3.
So structure parking is a requirement to get to 57 feet. I don't remember, is it I think it is one of the options to get to the floor area. So it's kind of weird because a lot of these benefits end up overlapping in the code, which I guess is good if what we're going for is to really strongly encourage something like structure parking.
Let me ask the same question. Look, if you go to, at the same page, number 8, right? According to WMC 21, blah, 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 there, and it basically says, the proposal provides public open space plus 2 more public incentive. What are the 2 incentives, basically? That's all I want. think it's structured parking and, is it private open space or?
Yes, I believe it's structured parking in the private open space.
Okay. And the last question is for the same page, so that page that has everything. So I bring you at the top, the first table, which is, I guess, number 5, the very last row, public art. There's a comment, may want to consider putting a minimum expenditure number here. Do you have any guidance on this, or what have we done in the past?
So in the past, we haven't put a number on it. And I think what we see sometimes is, there was one level of expectation to what public art would be, and what actually ends up being provided in the end maybe doesn't meet that expectation. So, just off the top of our heads, we had talked about maybe it's some percentage of the additional benefit they're getting by getting this FAR bonus. And what exactly that percentage should be is kind of up to you guys to think about, because it's not actually in the code. But it was just a thought to kind of make sure that you are getting what you thought you were going to get out of it.
Yeah, it's hard to come up with a number, but thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Melman.
Yeah, I wasn't able to find it, but there was reference to mitigating some of the construction traffic in there somewhere. I read it. It said something, setting aside a certain amount of parking, and if that can be met, the developer had to provide carpooling for the workers and that type of thing. So it's in there somewhere. I just don't, it's pretty big, and I couldn't find it, but it is addressed somewhere in there.
Yeah, it is actually in the SEPA. The mitigated determination of non-significance, which is on page 19 of your packet, where one of the requirements of the SEPA determination is to do a construction mitigation plan that talks about these types of issues.
Anything else? Commissioner Meza?
I just had a quick clarifying question. What exactly is the developer asking for? Are they asking for the 2.5 FAR exemption and nothing else?
Investing.
And
Of vesting to the current regulations and impact fees.
okay, thank you.
Okay. With that concludes the staff report. We will now go to public comments. While I'm waiting for the sheet, we do have 3 letters that have been asked to be read into the record, and I will do that at this time. Dated August 21, 2019, Planning Commissioners, to the Chair and members of the Planning Commission, I strongly support the Westpoint mixed-use project. I am strongly against staff's motions requiring the applicant to provide any type of affordable dwelling units or additional benefits to the city without providing the applicant additional incentives. I do not support amendment of the development agreement to change duration of time to exclude school impact fees from vesting. It is unfair and unworthy to adopt these motions for the Westpoint project when it has not been done with other projects. It makes no sense, and I strongly oppose these motions. The city is simply signaling out a project not appropriate. These motions will place the city developer and the project at risk. I fully support the published development agreement as in the study session packet dated August 14, 2019. I asked the Planning Commission to recommend and approve the development agreement in the study session packet. Signed, sincerely, Ed Anderson. Dated August 21, regarding the Westpoint Development Agreement, public hearing to the Chair and members of the Planning Commission. I strongly support the Westpoint mixed-use project, and I object to the motions introduced by staff to require applicant to provide any affordable housing. I also oppose to amend the development agreement to change duration of the time or to exclude school impact fees from vesting. These motions introduced by the staff have not been studied, vetted, or done for any other development agreement. It is unfair to adopt these motions. I am strongly against them. These motions will place the city and the developer in jeopardy. I fully support the motion to recommend the published development agreement as is in the study session packet dated August 14, 2019. I ask the Planning Commission to recommend and approve the development agreement in the study session packet. Sincerely, John Peterson. This is an email from Tara Tarbert from Monday, August 19, 2019, sent to Amanda Almgren. Subject against the Westpoint mixed-use project. Hi, Amanda. I am an owner at Sunridge Condos. I'm against the Westpoint mixed-use project at 12463 Northeast Woodinville Drive. The traffic is already a bottleneck in the area. It is a challenge to get in and out of the complex, and the time to get in is longer due to the line of cars. In emergency, the road congestion is already a problem as well. Adding a residential 176-unit complex forecast 176 more cars that will 1,000% increase the traffic on a daily basis, which is already a problem. In addition, the retail use below will add hundreds of more cars to the surrounding roads, creating even worse traffic. This is not the right area for this development. I request a copy of the traffic study done for this project and the safety considerations designed for the walkers and bikers, group biking, of which slow down traffic to, and individual. Regards, Tara Tarbert. So those will be entered into the record. We will now go to the sign-up sheet. The first person to sign up is Chuck Price. Please come forward, state your name, whether you reside within the city of Woodinville or not, and you will have 5 minutes. And we have a lot of people, so we ask that you please try to stay within the time limits.
I am Chuck Price. I do live within the city of Woodinville. And I have a letter here for the Planning Commission. Dear members of the Planning Commission, I was very surprised when reviewing the agreement in this week's packet to see the numbers change from the original development agreement on page 9 of the agreement, item number 5. The maximum number of residential units was reduced from 176 to 161. I understand that the planning department did this to be consistent with the SEPA approval numbers. The FAR square footage requirements dictate the overall maximum square footage of the building, and the number of residential units only determines the average square footage of the units. If the Planning Commission reduces the units number, they are effectively saying they want larger and more expensive units. There was concern at the study session about the affordability of units and interest in providing young adults the opportunity to afford, rent, or buy into home ownership. It also limits the flexibility of Westpoint properties to consider more studios or one-bedroom units, which would be more affordable. The State Environmental Policy Act, SEPA, is a process to evaluate environmental impacts and mitigation of the environment. It also looks at the human elements of the project. The building size, footprint, and square footage does not change with the reduction of the number of units. It only increases unit square footage and has no effect on the project environmentally. Therefore, this change in the SEPA approval from 161 to 176 should be considered insignificant, and the planning director has the authority to approve the change with no further SEPA review. I ask you direct the planning director to do so. As far as the third motion listed in the packet, I ask the Planning Commission to move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of Westpoint Mixed-Use Development Agreement to the City Council as presented in the study session version on August 14th, 2019, to increase the opportunity for flexibility and more affordable housing. The requirement for FAR of 2.5 residential is to provide a development agreement. This has been met by the applicant. The purpose of the requirement was to give the Council an opportunity to review and approve the architectural characteristics of the project. The intent of the Council was to encourage the FAR 2.5 residential in downtown to provide for the county required growth management housing goals. This would also protect the existing R1 zoning from having to be rezoned to R4. There's nothing in the code for the applicant to provide additional benefits or mitigation, such as affordable housing. I do not agree with any motion that would put any requirement to include affordable dwelling units in this project. This would bind the flexibility of the project and handcuff Westpoint properties too much, impacting the flexibility of the project. You may not get a development agreement agreed to on these terms after Westpoint Properties has been working at considerable cost and time in development of the mutually agreeable development agreement presented in the study session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price. The next person that has signed up is, and I'm sorry I'm having trouble with the last name, Kevin Clary. Now I recognize the name. Good evening, Mr. Clary. Please state your name, whether you live within the city of Woodinville or not, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Clary. I do not live in the city of Woodinville. I'm the architect for the Westpoint project. I believe a mixed-use project such as this is an important part of the urban fabric of a community, especially when you're talking about developing it in an urban context. A mixed-use project such as the one we designed creates kind of a layering of uses. The uses that we've layered here are kind of carefully crafted and coordinated with the zoning code, the building code, as well as the intended uses that the owner looks to put in on the ground floor, in this case, retail, office, and most specifically the housing above. As we work with them in our planning process, we carefully try and craft what layers work within a project to kind of make that project successful. And so we carefully look at what options are available and working with increasing the FAR in this case, or how to work within the realm of the planning code guidelines. For the increase to the 2.0 to 2.5 FAR, the choices that we had were many. There's several. And what we chose in working with the owner was carefully selected and carefully worked into the design. The overhead weather protection that was enhanced, the public amenity at the street, the transit area, the water feature, etc. All of those kind of worked into the program of the building and into the layering of the building and the design to create that space, that building, that feature. There were other options that could have been chosen. One of them, as we've been hearing a lot tonight, is the affordability. What I've found in working with other developers in my career is that in some cases, what works for one developer doesn't work for another for various reasons, and it's because of this layering. So just as what works well for one jurisdiction to put into their code doesn't always work well for others. I'd encourage you to consider that as far as you look into the plan of this building. What was chosen and done and created and coordinated as we worked through the land use process and the land use piece, as well as now for the development agreement, is part of creating a predictability. A predictability not only for the city, but also a predictability for the developer that's trying to engage in this development project for everybody. And in that, what's created is a site that is redesigned, re-energized, and recreated. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clary. And the next person that has signed up is Slavik Porowski. Mr. Porowski. Please state your name, whether you live within the city limits or not. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Slavik Porowski. I'm a resident of Woodinville, and I also am an architect and have been enjoying the privilege of working with Mr. Gadusi and Kevin McCleary. The issues brought up today are very significant. I heartily agree with Mr. Price speaking earlier about the increase in FAR being countered by the reduction of the number of units, resulting in actual net increase of housing cost because the units would be available only to larger families and significantly more expensive. Most of my practice is in Seattle. I have done so-called CDUs, which is small efficiency dwelling units at 270 square feet. And they rented before they were built because that's a popular solution. And with the same square footage of, say, conventional 10-unit apartment building, we have 18, sometimes 20. And yet people clamor for them because if they are well designed, architecture is smoke and mirrors. It's you live in what you think you live in, not in hard established Big Brother dictated facts. No, if it's well designed, you'll be happy in a small space. So the notion that a project becomes better when there are fewer units and people have, fortunately now, deleted fireplaces and appendages like that is it's a fallacy. It is. I'm trying to be courteous to all, but the reality of living the life of a designer, I've been an architect for 40 some years, is that you start cutting through the, not just through the tape, but through the commonly perceived notions that bigger is better. Sort of like it used to be with cars. You know, we had 6 meter or 18-foot long cars that barely carried 4 people, but they were hip, that was the way to design. And all of a sudden we are designing cars that are 14 feet long and carry 7 people. So it's all about how it is done, and I believe that the project that Kevin Cleary and Bayless Architects did, I was lucky to be able to contribute some of the external, shall we say, Amsterdamification. It's an excellent use of space. And with regard to the letter of the condominium owner uphill, it's a classic NIMBY. Woe be upon thee who try to mess with my view, because that's what it amounts to. The uphill side of the proposed development offers a low-key 3-story development, which is entirely in keeping with the uphill development. Plus, it only offers 1 parking exit. Consequently, the parking impact is primarily on the Woodinville Drive, not on the uphill, not 173rd. And it is easy to write an impassioned letter, and it is easy to sway opinion if, well, we have a president who's doing it all the time. So I plead with you that you apply the judgment that you've hitherto applied to this project and go with the developers' proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borowski. Next person that has signed up is Farga Ducey.
Hello again, Chairman Stadler. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm representing Westpoint Properties, LLC. I got that hat on now. So
For the record, would you state your name, though, even though I said
Farga Ducey, 12463 Northeast Woodinville Drive, Westpoint Properties, LLC. I'm the managing member. I asked the Planning Commission to approve and recommend approval of the development agreement as presented tonight in your packet without any changes. The city has recommended motion number 3 in your packet, the following alternative. I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the Westpoint Mixed-Use Development Agreement to the City Council as presented. This alternative is presented to you because Westpoint Properties LLC has met the requirements and threshold for the development agreement. Otherwise, this option would not be in your packet tonight. Westpoint does not accept and does not agree to provide affordable housing, dwelling units. Westpoint has over 3 years of planning and a large investment into the project and would like to see this project move forward with the agreement as presented. Westpoint does not accept and does not agree to amend the duration of time for the development agreement. Westpoint does not accept and agree to amend to exclude school impact fees for vesting. In fact, Westpoint plans to ask Council to extend and amend the duration of vesting of impact fees from 7 years to 10 years to be consistent with other projects such as Wooden Creek Phase 6, 1 building, 1 phase that was recently recommended by the Planning Commission and approved by Council. According to Westpoint's understanding through previous city staff that coordinated the project, and as former Mayor Price testified during the study session on August 14th, 2019, which is last week, the intent of FAR, floor area ratio, residential increase from 2.0 to 2.5 requiring a development agreement was to make sure the city gets the architectural styles and features that it wants. We believe this has been accomplished based on the overall positive architectural comments received by you during the study session. Westpoint project is located in the Special District Pedestrian Mixed-Use Overlay, referred to as Old Town, voted by council in 2010 through a legal amendment. The purpose of the special district overlay as set forth in the Woodinville Municipal Code is to provide high-density, pedestrian-oriented housing, retail, and employment uses. Special district pedestrian mixed-use overlay allows Westpoint under the code to ask for an increase of residential floor area ratio from 2.0 to 2.5 with a development agreement. The notion Westpoint needs to negotiate additional benefits such as affordable housing is false, irrelevant, and has no factual basis to the architectural features of the project that is required by a development agreement to achieve residential FAR 2.0. I know the staff has been talking about 35 units and 23,000 square feet. The number could be 160 units or 100,000 square feet. That is totally irrelevant with respect to this. Westpoint is not asking for anything beyond what the code allows. For example, Westpoint is not asking for a higher density, more than the aggregate density of FAR 4.5, allowed under the standard regulation without even the need of a development agreement. For example, Westpoint is not asking for a higher intensity type project to raise the height limit by 20 feet as currently being proposed by another project in the city, which you're going to be discussing later on tonight. Westpoint development agreement is within the boundaries of the existing allowable code. Additionally, Westpoint is providing opportunity for public transit facility that we don't believe has been done by other projects in the city. I asked the Planning Commission to recommend to Council the development agreement as presented without changes. Thank you for your consideration, approval, and recommendation to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caducci. Excuse me. Those are the only people that have signed up. Is there anybody else in attendance tonight that would like to make public comment or testify at the public hearing at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to any further questions or comments that commissioners have. Any commissioner? Okay. Nope. Commissioner Duchatel.
Could we get some clarification about the 176, 161? What is actually being asked? Is it changed because of SEPA? If you could enlighten us, that'd be great.
I'll go ahead and answer that. So you may recall from the study session, we mentioned to you, and in fact in your packet you have the land use project approval. This project was a little bit unique in that the applicant had actually requested to have the land use project approval completed before the development agreement. Normally it's the other way around. And so within that land use project approval actually was the 161 number, as well as there was actually a higher number in both office and in the retail in the land use project approval than there was in the development agreement. So what we had mentioned about was trying to create consistency between the two, and part of this is that the evaluation for concurrency, which is a requirement under our code, which talks about traffic, sewer, water, all that kind of stuff, that was all evaluated based on the land use project approval, not necessarily what was in the development agreement. We went through some conversations with the applicant actually, and at the end, and heard him testifying here earlier, that the proposal for the 161 and the numbers that you see in here for the commercial and for both the residential and for the office were basically what he wanted us to bring forward to you. I would also note, if you go into just because those numbers are there, I just want you to also note if you go looking into the agreement on page 9 in paragraph 5, where it talks about allowable development. So these are the numbers that we're using basically to potentially approve the development agreement for consistency with our codes and everything. But there is, if you look halfway down that clause, there is an ability, if he wants to come back in later, to adjust these numbers, the square footage numbers and the number of residential units. There is an ability to do that. This doesn't actually lock him in to the 161. It's just that if he does that, it will trigger additional reviews, including potentially looking at the land use project approval may have to be amended, and there would just be additional reviews going down the road on this. So, but in order to keep things simple, the land use project approval we currently have and the development agreement we present to you for consistency. All the reviews and stuff have been based on that. And then again, if there are changes down the road, this contract does give them that ability, and we would then do further reviews at that point. Does that make sense?
Yes. Sort of. You say makes that, but the first page still says 176. The agreement says 161. So which one is it? Is it one?
The first page of...
Very first page, number 1.
Oh,
the proposed project to construct a mixed-use building containing 176 multifamily.
Right, you're talking about the staff report. Right, the development agreement itself is actually correct. The staff report, we carried it over from the last one, we missed.
That's what I figured,
updating
okay.
that.
So it's 161, and they could go to 176 with extra review.
They could actually go to even more than that potentially if they wanted to.
Okay. And is that in accordance with what, I guess we could ask what does the developer want right now? Are they?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I mean, as he was testifying in the hearing, the numbers that are in the development agreement itself are the numbers for this.
Thank you for that clarification.
Any other commissioners have questions? Commissioner Meza.
Yes, one question. So is the 161 units at the FAR 2.5 or FAR 2.0?
It's at the FAR 2.5. And so I think some of the people who testified kind of touched on this. Right, the FAR talks about the overall floor area ratio. So how you break that up doesn't so much matter for the floor area ratio portion of it, but then it does matter for the traffic studies and things like that and parking studies. So that's really the only issue with going with the higher number. The FAR is 2.5 in both situations. It's just a matter of how it's broken up, and if it is broken up into more units, then we need to look at the traffic and the parking again.
So based on those constraints, what is the maximum number of units that this project can go to?
As creative as he wants to be about it, as long as we address the impacts, both traffic, parking, and the other types of impacts, which would happen during the permit review process.
Okay, thank you.
So the traffic study, was that done at 176 or 161?
So that was actually done at 167.
Okay.
So
somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between. But that one was done at a slightly lower commercial and office space amount. And so with lower units and a little bit more commercial space, I think it pretty close to comes out to be the same. But if we are going with the higher commercial and office space and the higher units, I think we definitely need to look at it again.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead, Commissioner Meza.
I just want to make a comment. Just want to thank everybody for testifying and providing your feedback. I think that thinking about affordable housing is an important thing as responsible citizens of our community. With that said, part of providing affordable housing is increasing the stock and supply of housing. So putting constraints on that does impede affordable housing. I would like to see us also thinking about the perspective of the environmental impact and what gains we can get there on our new projects. This is becoming more of a problem that we have to address. So I would love to see the developers of this project, in good faith, provide some concessions around LEED certification or how to make the building more green. Thank you.
Any other commissioner? Commissioner Milne.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment. Appreciate you guys attending and providing input. I too am in favor of affordable housing. I think there's lots of ways to get to that. I'm a little uncomfortable when it's introduced at the 11th hour and after land is purchased, designs are drawn up, and then we throw this in at the 11th hour. It makes me a little uncomfortable. I know it's an added cost, and it's something that we're doing more studies on. I think it should be introduced earlier to developers earlier in the process so that it doesn't come across as a onerous type of event. Having said that, I think down the road that it would behoove us in the city to introduce that, some type of vision for that earlier when people are designing these projects. And also to comment on that that whole little Old Town area, at least the area that we're talking about, if you haven't been by there, it's kind of a sliver, kind of a peninsula that kind of stretches there between Woodinville Drive and 173rd. So it's a unique area. I think it's hard to develop, and I think they've done a good job of a design that looks like it'll fit really well in that area. I think it's going to be a needed and a benefit to that area. I'm in favor of it as is, and I appreciate you guys testifying.
Commissioner Duduchel, do you have anything to come in?
Sure, I'll plug. I brought some donuts, so make sure to eat the donut before you leave. No, seriously, thank you. This is a very nice project. Thank you for people giving you comments. Yes, I agree. Affordable housing is great. I don't think we're going to get this project to solve all of our problem. It's more of, I think, the discussion for long term, which council should start, and then we can. One question actually just came up. Sorry. As proposed is something about exclusion of the school impact fees. Question for staff, have we done that? Is this a recommendation? Is this a tacit recommendation that we should do that? What have we done in past? I'm always wary of, this is the second time we're looking at this, or third time whenever you look, and we're like, oh, let's put a new rule. Is this coming out, or is this something we always do? That I've never seen this before.
So that's a great question. So a couple things to know. In the past, we actually haven't had school impact fees until recently. Even though we, in 2001, adopted a school impact fee for a long, long period of time, the numbers didn't add up that a school impact fee could be charged. So many of the development agreements that have happened have had the vesting to zero for school impact fees because we didn't have any. Council's been kind of changing lately because we recently adopted a school impact fee, and there's been discussion about trying to support the schools more. And in fact, you're going to have a little later here discussion about the schools capital facilities plan coming up, which supports what potentially can be school impact fees. So this is why we bring this to your attention for the conversation. Ultimately, it's up to you to decide again what you want to recommend. But there has been, there's been kind of a shift in some of the policy discussions with the council regarding school impact fees.
But what I'm getting at is we don't make policy, the council does. So this long process of negotiation with the applicant as possibility of impact fees for school being brought up, or is this the first time they're hearing about it?
So you make a recommendation to the council, and you do this all the time with policy stuff, that like when we get to the next thing.
Yeah, sure.
So you're just making a recommendation, and if you don't think it's a good idea, and let them vest to what the current is today, which would be zero for this project, because right now multifamily is zero, then that's perfectly fine. But if you think that you may want to separate that out, then that's the recommendation you would want to make.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that question. That was a question I had too. Just a couple of comments I'll make. I want to remind the commissioners that we can change the development agreement at any point until we take a vote. And if something comes up at the 11th hour that we think is a good idea, we certainly can add that. While I appreciate the testimony given in public comment tonight, these are subject to change until the end. And that's why we have the public hearing and we have these deliberations. With that said, I'm not in favor of the 17 affordable dwelling units because, again, as I said before, I don't think we have studied that enough. I just did some quick numbers, and based on the family of four at $88,000 after taxes and everything, that would leave them about, I think, $1,700 or something a month for rent. It gets them in, based on the average square footage of a rental now, that would put them in a 503 square foot apartment. So that's not going to be a one bedroom, it's not going to be a two bedroom, it's going to be a small studio. So with that, I don't think that we have enough information or if it's appropriate to do that. I know that on the work plan for the council is a housing strategy. I hope that comes sooner rather than later. I think it's very important. The affordable housing is a serious issue that I think we need to address. As for amending the duration of the time, I think we should stick with the 10 years. And again, I think maybe we have more of a conversation about when we would want to change it to 7 years, depending upon the project, that kind of thing. Because we've always done the 10 years, but I don't think we have to stay to it. But I think we have to have more discussion on that. And as far as the school impact fees, yeah, I think we need to look at that a little bit further. So with that, does anybody want to make a motion? Or, no, we need to close the public hearing. So, for the convention to close.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstain. All right. We are now down to a motion if we want to recommend anything to the council. Commissioner Melman.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the Westpoint Mixed Use Development Agreement to the City Council as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the Westpoint Mixed Use Development Agreement to the City Council as presented. Any further discussion? Maker of the motion, do you have any further comments?
I'll just stick with my earlier comment. I like the design. I like the work that's been put in there. I think it'll be a great addition to that area, and thank you for your work.
Any other commissioners have any comments? Commissioner Meza.
Yes, just want to reiterate that I agree with everything that has been said, but I'd like to see more emphasis on, instead of things like public art or things that may not bring as much value to the immediate urgencies of other issues that we have, like addressing climate action. I'd rather emphasize those things than things like public art. So, thank you.
Okay, with that, we will have a vote. All those in favor of the motion to recommend approval of the Westpoint Mixed Use Development Agreement to the City Council as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right. That takes care of that item. The next item is a public hearing on the Tourist Business Zone Height Amendment. And give us a chance to, in our packet, get there. All right. Can we have a motion to open the public hearing relating to increasing the height?
Sure.
With the development agreement in the tourist business zone.
I move to open the public hearings relating to the increasing of height with the development agreement in the tourist business zone.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to open the public hearing relating to the increasing of height with a development agreement in the tourist business zone. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstain? All right, public hearing is open. Staff report.
All right, this is going to be fairly short. We've actually already had quite a bit of conversation, so I'm just going to kind of cover over a couple of things and then just kind of summarize the proposed amendment. So just again, you may recall that this all started originally with the Woodinville Hotel Partners. They applied for a zoning code amendment with a request to increase the height allowed under a development agreement from 49 feet to 67 feet in the tourist business zone. This was originally first presented to the council. We wanted to get some feedback to see if they were interested in having the Planning Commission take a look at this further, and they said yes, and so we brought it down here and began our conversations on it. So one of the things, whenever, of course, we're looking at any code amendments, we want to make sure that those code amendments are consistent with our comp plan. Our comp plan doesn't necessarily get specifically into height standards, but this is what it does have to say about it. The comp plan basically tells you about, basically you want standards to ensure that the neighborhood commercial development is compatible with surrounding residential areas. So you're thinking about how height fits in with the character of the commercial development in the tourist business zone. Additionally, one of the things that we've adopted as part of our comp plan is our tourist district master plan. It's a sub-area plan. And it sets forth the policy where it says adopt architectural design guidelines to aid developers in understanding the city's vision of the tourist district. Design guidelines should help commercial structures incorporate design that fits in with the historic, small-scale agriculture and rural life. You notice that there really isn't a lot of very specific guidance out of this, so what that's really just telling you is that there's a lot of flexibility in what you might want to consider in terms of the height standards down in the tourist business zone. So next, I'm just going to kind of jump into the amendment. This is essentially what we're looking to amend. It's section Woodinville Municipal Code 21.22.040. You'll see this is the current code provision. It talks about the base height under the TB zone. It's 35 feet. But then there's this little footnote, number 20, where it says height may be increased to, currently it says 49 feet, and the proposal is to change this to 67 feet when, and we'll go into that in a moment. I do want to note, though, this is the tourist business zoning. There is also a height standard under the tourist district overlay, which the entire tourist business zone is under, and that actually allows a standard height or a base height of actually 45 feet. So 45 feet is really the base height. And then this footnote allowed you through a development agreement go to 49 feet, and the proposed amendment goes through the development agreement to allow it to go to 67 feet when structured parking is provided. This is one of the things we kind of pulled from, you heard earlier when we were talking about the development agreement, one of the public benefits about additional height being structured parking, so we pulled that into this as well. Open space is another one of these things that would be a requirement in order to get the additional height. And then we had basically this allowance that either they would do a LEED gold or higher standard is achieved with the building, or they could choose two of the three public incentives, which are listed in your document. I wasn't going to go over those again in the presentation because you can take a look at your documents there for those incentives. Additionally, we looked at basically wanting to put some limitations when you get over this 57-foot height, which is the height that you can generally do with bonuses. We wanted to put a little bit of a limitation so that we can kind of reduce some of the bulk and help make sure we're not intruding into some of the potential view corridors and stuff. And so the standard we looked at was limiting it to 25% or 3,000 square feet. And the 25% is of the footprint of the building, or 3,000 square feet, whichever is less. We also would require these at a minimum to be stepped back at least 5 feet from the edge of the building. And to minimize view obstructions to properties, within a half mile, and there's a requirement for a study to be incorporated with that. I would also note, because of the requirement for a development agreement, one of the nice things, as you kind of just went through earlier with the development agreements, is that if we find other things that when somebody wants to make a proposal under this, there is the ability to put additional requirements or conditions around any height over the 57 feet, or over the 57 with bonuses and stuff. Actually, I'm going to back up. Over the 45 foot in height. So if there are concerns that when we actually look at an actual project, you do have the ability to further address that when the development agreement comes in front of you. And then finally, I wanted to note, we have talked about this at our May 15th, June 19th, July 17th meetings. In fact, the folks down there in the Wine Village for the hotel project that initiated this kind of gave you some view analysis, and there was some additional stuff that was provided to you in an email before the meeting here. I believe it was yesterday. One thing I also want to just remind everybody, because we talked about this in the beginning, you are dealing with a code amendment, which is a legislative process. So at this point, we're not really getting down into the specifics about evaluating the merits of the hotel project itself. We just are using the hotel project as a way to kind of evaluate potential impacts from allowing this. But again, keep in mind, we're not necessarily evaluating this specifically against the project itself, because this would be something that's available for anybody in the tourist business zone. Doesn't mean that we have to necessarily approve if somebody else wanted to do it on another property, but just know that anybody in the tourist business zone could potentially come in through a development agreement and make the same request for the additional height. And so that kind of concludes my presentation. This is in your packet. This is just basically the motions. You've already done the first one, and then the other motions that are presented in your packet. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No? All right. With that, then, anybody sign up for? Nobody has signed up for public testimony at the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that would care to make public testimony? Seeing none? No questions? Any? Nope. Please come forward, state your name, whether you live within the city of Woodinville or not, and you have 5 minutes.
Fargadusi, I live in the city. I just want to say that we need to be really careful with this. For example, we just went through my project, and there was a lot of deliberation and a lot of gray area. and we need to make it very clear in terms of what the requirements are. If the commissioners are interested in this, and I think it needs to be very clear what it is what we're expecting of the developer in the development agreement, and make sure that it's very concise. That's all I got. Thank you.
Does anybody else care to make public testimony at this time? All right, seeing none. Oh, please come forward, state your name, whether you live within the city of Woodinville or not, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Glenda Cooper, and I'm in unincorporated King County. I just want to remind everybody that if you approve things to the higher height and it applies to all the areas, it's going to impact different areas differently. Like in the tourist district, it's going to be different there than it would be in downtown. That is wine country over there. And if you turn it into wine city, it's not going to have the same pull as everybody wants it to have. There's also the concerns about areas where you can't adjust traffic, specifically like say 202. If you increase the height and increase the number of people that are in these buildings, that's going to increase traffic, and there's nothing you can do about 202. It's pretty much the way it is. So that's going to impact that entire area. I just want to remind everybody that there's different areas in the city that are going to be impacted by different things. So, thank you.
All right, anybody else? Please come forward, state your name, whether you're a resident, and you have 5 minutes.
I am not a resident of Woodinville, Kent Halverson. I'm with the hotel. Let me just say that our intent here is to create a development that's cohesive with retail development next door. With the grade elevations that we have here, it puts us down below the retail development. And this really needs to be a cohesive development. We're also looking, again, for some height for our lobby so we can have a grand lobby, so we can have a really great tourist hotel here that really represents something really classy in the Woodinville city. With that, we have asked for really the top 10 feet is just for a small portion of the roof to be able to do a rooftop garden and a rooftop bar that celebrates the valley and the whole area. And this is really intended to be, a open to the public type facility. And that's really all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else care to make public testimony? No, seeing none. Yes, you can move to close the public hearing if you want.
Yeah, we'll make comment after it. I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Abstain? All right. With that, we can have a motion and then we can comment on the motion if we want.
Okay, sure. I get to read a lot today. I move that the Planning Commission approve a recommendation amending Section 21.22.040 of the Woodinville Municipal Code relating to increasing the maximum height in the tourist business zone with a development agreement.
Second.
There's a motion and a second that the Planning Commission approve a recommendation amending Section 21.22.040 of the Woodinville Municipal Code relating to increasing the maximum height in the tourist business zone with a development agreement. As maker of the motion, would you like to comment?
Yes. This keeps with the vision, the plan that we have for the tourist district. It is only for that tourist district. The modification does not apply. You could argue that it sets a precedence on that, but it's a separate entity. And since we've been looking at this for many meetings now, I've met more than 30 people and talked about. I would say the vast majority of people are okay with the extra height as long as there's a vision, and that's what's important. I really like the last comment about that grand lobby. That's what we want. We want a grand lobby, keeping, even though it's vague, the tourist master plan thing hits it. It's like we want the small town feel. We want to keep Woodinville as it is, a small, like the winery area. So a big lobby from Bellevue wouldn't fit there. A big lobby that's Woodinville, grandiose, and as the rural feel, the aesthetic, I think, is exactly the kind of thing. And of course, the project is just an example, but I think that's what the height gives us that possibility in that area. And that's why I think the vision is there to do that and keep our plan. And that's why I make that motion. Thank you.
Commissioner Mason.
Yes, I also agree that the impact would be minimal here. The added height, as stated, has been asked for the rooftop amenity and the lobby, so I don't see that increasing the amount of people or necessarily the number of rooms that will be available in the hotel. So I think the impact is minimal, and the benefit to the public and community, I think, is worth it. I also want to reiterate that I recommend that we ask for LEED Platinum certification to allow for the added height. If we really want to make this a centerpiece of Woodinville, then I think that would be something that we can highlight as an example for the rest of the developers of the type of building that we want to see in our community. Thank you.
Commissioner Melvin, any comments? Sorry. Yeah, I will echo what Commissioner Duchatel said. We have had several study sessions on this, given feedback to staff. I think it, as pointed out, the added height is simply, with the grand lobby, it's not going to increase the number of rooms. So I'm comfortable with moving this forward. With that, we will have a vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve a recommendation amending section 21.22.040 of the Woodinville Municipal Code relating to increasing the maximum height in the tourist business zone with a development agreement, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, that passes. Now we go on to the next business item, a study session on the comprehensive plan amendment to adopt the 2019-2025 North Shore Capital Facilities Plan.
So I'm going to have Roxy actually introduce this, and then we've actually got somebody from the school district here that's going to talk about the capital facilities plan.
Excellent. Welcome, Roxy. Good to see you.
Hi, commissioners. So we're going to be going over, going through the amendment process for the capital facilities plan for the North Shore School District. So this is our study session, and then we'll schedule a hearing for your next meeting, and then that's when you'll make the recommendation. So we use the school district's capital facilities plan to establish what the school impact fees will be, and council will adopt the fees by resolution. The planning commission's role is to adopt the plan. And so we have Tracy Rogstad from the North Shore School District here to answer any questions that you may have on the, to give a presentation on the plan and how it might change our school impact fees. Thank you, Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy Rogstad. I don't live in Woodinville, but I am here representing the North Shore School District. And we put together kind of a brief presentation to run you through this, because obviously the capital facilities plan is a 40-page sum document. It goes into a lot of detail about our capacity throughout the entire district. And so I'll run this through this. I certainly can answer questions at the end, or if you feel like you need to interrupt me, please feel free to. Again, this is a 6-year projection. We update annually. It's required under the Washington State Growth Management Act. It outlines our projected student enrollment throughout the district by school, by grade span, by each boundary district within our district, the trends and projections moving forward over the 6-year period. It talks about our standard of service and our capital facilities inventory of capacity. The plan itself talks about our facility needs, growth projects, facilities and financing plan. If you go through the plan in detail, you'll see a lot of this there. If throughout this process we find that we're legally eligible, then it describes the amount of role and the role of impact fees if funding school construction. Over the last 6 years, our enrollment grew by 2,694 students. That's a trend that we've been seeing over the last few years. 1,377 is the growth that we experienced just in the last 2 years alone. So as you can imagine, that is equivalent to, depending on whether you look at a mini or a smaller elementary school or a larger elementary school, that's equivalent to at least 2 to 4 schools, depending upon how you look at it. We have a projected growth of another just over 1,200 students over the next 6 years. And for the first time in history, our share of King County K-12 population has grown from 7.5 to 7.7%. We take a look at our growth in the pipeline. So when we find out about developments moving forward through either the early plat process or the permit process, we try to monitor that, and that helps us in our projections in the near term, both in the near term and the out term, or the longer term. Right now we have just over 1,600 single-family homes in the pipeline and almost 2,500 multifamily units that are currently active permitted units. There's a very specific kind of how we follow the methodology and following a kind of a group of cohort as they move through the system from kindergarten moving forward to grade 12, and adjust that for the housing developments throughout the district. This is kind of a reverse of what we've been seeing. If I were to present to you 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you would see closer to 2,500, maybe even 3,000 single family units in the pipeline, and multifamily was more like 1,200 in the pipeline. So we're seeing really a reverse of that, and we're seeing that in all 5 of our jurisdictions, which we currently deal with: King County Unincorporated, Snohomish County, City of Bothell, City of Kenmore, and as well as City of Woodinville. So that's something that I think related to the earlier conversation is something we're seeing throughout the district. Just a little bit about our district standard of service. Obviously, as a district, we have a high standard in optimizing our student learning. We want to make sure that we have a variety of programs offered to serve the various needs throughout with our families. Addressing our Core 24, which is the current graduation requirements for a 4-year comprehensive high school, and the newly legislated K-3 class size that is implemented this fall. This is just a snapshot of the growth really over a 20-year period. We have our capital bond every 4 years, looking back to 2006, the different property acquisitions that we've had to adjust to the massive growth that we've had since 2010. Projects that are in construction, we had North Creek High School, which we opened in 2017, addressing a serious need for high school capacity. We currently have an elementary school in construction that is scheduled to open fall of 2020. We just recently purchased a commercial building in the Canyon Park Business Center that will be renovating and converting to a choice high school over the next 6 to 18 months. We also have added a 30 classroom addition between the Skyview Middle School and Canyon Creek Elementary campus. All of these are growth projects. They are not to modernize any of our current schools. They're just trying to help the North Shore District keep up with growth. The second phase of the school project off of Maltby Road will be a middle school moving forward. That'll be in our next bond, but that's already at 30% design. We've had to do boundary changes. That's one area that we focus on before we really look at, okay, do we actually need to construct a new school? We look at how can we adjust our boundaries throughout the district, within the district. So if we have an area that's growing faster than another area, can we adjust those boundaries to help take some of the capacity constraints off one school and maybe spread it out between 2 and 3 schools? That has been a good option for us up until about 3 years ago, where now we have this kind of growth throughout our entire district. I'd say the only place that doesn't experience that is your unincorporated King County, where you have much more limitations on the development. But when you have all of your schools growing to capacity, the special programs kind of has to move someplace, and so that extra capacity out at, say, Bear Creek has allowed us to move some programs out to that school. Portables is a common temporary or interim capacity option that many school districts use when you grow fast or you grow faster than what you project. We, as a school district, are really trying not to continue to put portables in. It's not necessarily a priority teaching area. A lot of families don't really like it. A lot of teachers don't like it, but many times it's your only option when you've got to come up with capacity in less than a year. Our school campuses are much more constrained as we put 125 portables in. So we really don't have a lot of room at our school districts anymore to put portables. So that kind of limits us moving forward as well. Just an overview of the district. We have 20 elementary schools and an early childhood center that is located over in City of Bothell. Capacity of 11,472, and 6 middle schools with a permanent capacity of 5,808, and 4 comprehensive high schools, one alternative, which is our alternative high school in Canyon Park. And in addition to that, all the new construction projects that I talked about would all be in addition to our current facilities inventory. Again, just a little bit of additional information about the district. We have our administration center, support services building, our transportation center. All these are located in the Montevilla Parkway or Canyon Park area. We have the projects that are currently in construction, and we do have 2 properties that there's no current plans. One is the Paradise Lake site that is outside the King County urban growth boundary area, and the Wellington Hills site, which we've been in lots of discussions with the city about how we may use that or may not use that eventually. In terms of the impact fees requirements for eligibility, we have to have projected enrollment growth from new development over the 6-year planning period. So if we're just talking about shifts within our programs, that does not make us eligible for impact fees. It has to be coming from new growth, new development in the district. We have to show a capacity deficit at that grade span district-wide. We have to show actual construction, new construction projects within that 6-year plan to address that deficit. And as you run through the calculation that involves student generation fees, that calculation must actually generate a fee. Again, the legal framework identified for the impact fees, we are required to expend them within 10 years. The impact fee is only applicable to new residential development. It can only be imposed for system improvements related to new development, and those impact fees cannot be used to address any building deficiencies or any maintenance or any renovations at schools that absolutely must be spent on new growth. The formulas that are used are adopted by ordinance in each jurisdiction, used by all school districts, and in that jurisdiction to calculate the fees. It's consistent with the Growth Management Act, and per state law, only the local jurisdiction assesses the fees on behalf of the school district and may act as the point of the collection of the fees, which we have the interlocal with the city of Woodinville that collect for us. Very typical of a lot of other impact fees. Again, we use a student generation rate, so we basically we go and we monitor all the new development in the district. We know how many students come from actual new development within a 5-year frame. It's basically a look back, what's happened in the last 5 years, what new developments were sold and occupied, how many students did those developments generate, and how do we as a district accommodate those students. And it includes only the growth-related costs, permanent construction only costs as part of that fee, and we get credits if we have any state match funds or real estate taxes that a homeowner would pay towards school construction. That final fee that is part of the capital facilities plan is discounted then by 50%, and that is the number that we as a school district ask for from our jurisdictions for collection. So your staff actually did a pretty good job in the background on this, and in number 3, it's identified these are the projects that are included in the capital or the impact fee calculation. These 5 projects are all adding new capacity to our district. And again, I think you may hear here and there that even with some of the capital construction that we are currently involved in, it's not going to allow us still space to work with. That is just, we're still growing so fast that even construction costs getting us to have additional space, we're barely keeping up with the growth, is my point. This is the impact fee calculation for the 2019 capital facilities plan. So the calculation this for 2019 is $20,092 for single family dwelling units and just over $3,500 for multifamily. I believe City of Woodinville adopted our 2017 last fall, been a little bit on a different schedule than the other jurisdictions. So last year in 2018, our capital facilities plan for the first time calculated a multifamily fee of $1,818. So well, starting this year, because it was adopted last year, the City of Bothell, King County, Snohomish County have all been collecting both fees for both single family as well as multifamily. And as we have expected and have told people, we continue to see the multifamily fee going up because we're seeing more families. We're seeing just kind of the pricing people are buying or renting more multifamilies than new development versus single family. And it's really a reflection of land availability as much as it is anything else. And just to give you a record there of what our past 4 years. So this would be our 4th year that we've become eligible again for a collection of impact fees. I think that's it. That's it. So I can take any questions if you like.
Any questions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming out and explaining that to us. It's a good subject. The numbers you stated originally with the 2,694 over 6 year or 2 years, is that for the district or just for the Woodinville part?
That is our district growth.
Okay. So.
Yeah, that is our district growth. We do have growth numbers for, I wouldn't say for, a city jurisdiction, but by school we anticipate, because that's broken down into what we call pockets. So as we develop the boundaries around a feeder school, like a high school and a middle school and elementary, we actually can drill down into what we anticipate each school growth to be. So if one area looks like it's growing more than others and we have to begin to adjust the boundaries a bit, which we try not to do unless we absolutely have to, because families settle based upon many times what school they want their children in. But that growth is a district-wide impact, and that's required as part of the growth management, that we have to, our numbers have to be driven, the district-wide numbers drive the impact fees.
But if I understand correctly, the school district looks at the entire district growth and then qualifies, and all the jurisdictions that touch the district are then equally affected, proportional to the, right, or how does that work?
North Shore School District is a little bit different than many districts. Because we have 5 jurisdictions in our school district, which is not common. So we as a district use our district-wide numbers, and then we have to go to each jurisdiction, just like I am tonight, to say, here's what our capital facilities plan looks like. Here's the fee we're recommending. Each jurisdiction then can, opt to accept those fees or make an adjustment downward if they so choose. Okay. So there is a little bit of control within each jurisdiction with the capital facilities plan, but we ask the same numbers of each jurisdiction.
Okay. And then my last question is well, a 2-part, I guess. Is that discounted 50% already there?
Yeah. It's already been discounted 50%.
Okay, thank you. And then why discount 50? I didn't get that part.
Denise, do you want to? This is our attorney, Denise DeFarm. She works with a lot of the school districts on this. I think she can explain it better than I can.
Thank you. I mean, it's good.
Denise DeFarm with Pacifica Law Group. And the 50% discount actually came out of the first school impact fee ordinance to be adopted in the state after the growth management was passed, and that was King County. That was 1991. And during that adoption process, the county brought together a group of stakeholders, including school districts, the development community, other interested parties, and it was a negotiation to meet everyone's interests at the same time at the table. The parties at that time agreed to that 50% discount. It has just remained in place, and it's something that has been simply replicated throughout most jurisdictions. Certainly, all of the cities within King County have followed that, with the exception of recently the cities of Carnation and Duval decided that they wanted to lower that discount to 25%. So that's the origin of that discount. There's no science to it. It was simply negotiated.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Mason, any question?
Yes. So all of the budget projections that the North Shore has done, I assume, are based on that 50% discount?
What do you mean by budget projections?
I mean, meaning this number that you came up with, I'm assuming is to cover all of the costs.
No, the number that, the impact fee calculation number is driven by many elements. So it's a formula-driven number. And so you look at the student generation that are generated from new development over the last 5 years, and that's a required portion of the formula. You look at the active construction costs to address that growth. So the 5 projects that I showed you or that identified that are currently adding capacity to our district. So those construction costs are entered into the formula. The local taxes are, local tax credits, those types of things are entered into the formula. So we don't necessarily budget impact fees because impact fees are by law not allowed to cover 100% of our construction costs. For example, we've been collecting about $2 to $3 million a year in impact fees from all of our jurisdictions. We're spending over $200 million on growth capacity projects in our district. So it really covers a small percent, but the idea behind impact fees is that growth pays for growth. So you have people that live in the district, whether they rent or they buy or whatever, they're paying real estate taxes, they're paying their portion to help support the schools. They vote on school levies and they vote on school bonds to help supplement those projects, whether they're maintenance levy or operations levy or capital projects. The school impact fee is really to address the issue around new growth into our district. And them, they're coming into a district with a great school system, and we're required to educate those kids. And so if we have to grow our district and add capacity, impact fees is a way to help us address those issues, but it by no means covers the cost that it costs the district to educate those kids and to build new facilities for them.
And do you mind just briefly stating where those other funds come from?
Typically, our bond. We, like the previous picture I showed you that shows we do a bond every 4 years. So in 2018, we passed or I should say our voters passed a $275 million bond. The 4 years prior to that was a $177.5 million bond. A portion of both of those bonds were one was to build the North Creek High School, which added high school at that grade span, added capacity. And that was $130 million out of that $177.5 million bond. The rest went to, life cycle system replacement issues within our district. This last bond, we went almost $150 million of that 275 went towards new growth construction to add capacity to the district.
And last question, does each jurisdiction have any input or say on how those funds get allocated, or do we have any influence into like the type of buildings, for example, that get built?
So like in what type of building we would build or something like that?
Yeah.
Well, we have, the district has a long-standing capital bond project task force. And so anyone from any of our jurisdictions are welcome to join those task forces, just like you would with the Planning Commission. They kind of we look at the district as a whole to look at what are the condition of our existing facilities, what's the ability in terms of passing a bond to keep our tax rate at a level rate, and how do we prioritize and weigh all of those. So in terms of how do we address different needs throughout the district, building improvement program, life cycle issues. And then when it comes to designing new buildings, we hire an architect and work with the architect firm, and we have kind of a visioning process that we bring in our teachers and principals and specialty users of that space to help us develop that.
Okay, and did those have to get approved by each of the jurisdictions, or is that entirely?
No. I mean, they do in the sense of just the permit process.
Okay.
But the visioning of what the program is very school district driven and driven by requirements from OSPI and, the state requirements as well. But the building, we obviously go through any permit process just like any other developer would.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for coming and watching the growth in those slides. It's a far different district than it was when Woodinville and Bothell merged in 1959 to form North Shore.
Definitely.
So happy 60th birthday to North Shore School District. Okay, that completes our business and discussion items. We now go into public comment. Has anybody signed in to make public comment? Nobody signed in. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to make public comment? Please come forward. Nobody has come forward. Director's report.
Just a couple of things to mention to you. Councilmember Taylor earlier mentioned the council's approval and that we've actually started going out and advertising for our department, for what may affect with you guys as the senior planner to help development services with some of our bigger projects and stuff like that. So that advertisement has begun. If you happen to know any experienced planners that might be interested, you might want to encourage them to apply. I also want to note, we also have some other staffing hirings we're working on right now. We've got interviews coming up for the assistant to the city manager. That's actually taking place tomorrow, and I believe next week we're going to be interviewing for intergovernmental affairs. That was, Alex was in that position before, and he's been promoted up to assistant to the city manager, so now we're looking to fill his old slot. So we've got a lot of movements going on still with staff before the end of this year is completed. Also, if you're interested, I just wanted to note for you, Falcons Landing is a short plat that there was an appeal filed for. If you're interested, next Wednesday, I believe it is, August 28th at 10 a.m., we have an appeal hearing. You're more than welcome to come and attend and observe. There's no public comment or anything because it is an appeal hearing, but you are welcome to attend and watch what goes on with those things. And then I also just kind of wanted to mention upcoming some of the upcoming things for your next meeting include our Shoreline Master Program. We've been working with our consultant to work on getting some additional inventory work and stuff, and I'm hoping and planning to currently at the next regular meeting to bring the newest draft to you. I'm also I'm not sure if we'll get to it or not, but I'm hoping to also have a conversation with Ecology and be able to talk to you about how we're going to go forward with the process on this, whether we're going to do it and then send it to Ecology or whether we'll do a joint review process with Ecology at the same time on that. So that's coming up at your September meeting. We will also have this comp plan amendment we mentioned earlier about the capital facility plan from the school will be at your next meeting. And there was one other item now I am starting to space on it. What was it? Oh, well, potentially we may be starting to talk to you about housing strategy. We've actually are going to be talking about it with the city manager next week and then talking potentially with council. Yeah, it'll be actually council first, but that was one of the things we mentioned because affordable housing came up. Housing strategy is something we're going to be kicking off in September with the council, and obviously you will eventually have some input on that. Oh yes, thank you. Urban tree canopy assessment, I gave the presentation on the results of that to the council at their last meeting, and I will be doing the Public Space Commission tomorrow, and then we'll give you a presentation at the September meeting. The other thing, that's what I was trying to remember, there's a lot of things going on. The use chapter, I'm hoping to start bringing some stuff to you and start introducing that work program item. That's a big item along with the Shoreline Master Program. So we've got a pretty full schedule coming up, and I know that Commissioner Mesa is going to talk to you also when you go to your own reports and stuff, that he's got something he wants to ask you about as well. And we'll need to think about where we might be able to plug that in as well, talking about green codes and stuff like that. So anyway, a lot of things going on. Just giving you kind of a heads up on some things coming up.
Great. With that, we will move to reports of commissioners and issues to be forwarded to the City Council. Commissioner Mesa.
Yes. As mentioned, I asked Mr. Zach Semke from the Shifty organization to come in today to kind of introduce himself and his organization. And they have offered their support and expertise to us. And I wanted to ask the rest of the commissioners that we add a item to the September agenda or in one of our other regular meetings, to have them come in and present to us regarding the topic of green building standards and their policy toolkit. I think especially with a lot of the projects that we have been reviewing lately, it has come up a lot. We have had a number of questions, and none of us are really experts in that area, so I reached out and found us an expert that has kind of agreed to come in and talk to us about that and answer our questions. So I think that would be a good opportunity for us to learn more on this topic.
Thank you, Commissioner Meza. I think that's a great idea. Staff, do you have an idea what would be the best meeting to have that at?
Well, so the first question I'd ask, would you rather just have a really long September regular meeting that would include this, or would you like to break this up a little bit and have this as a separate? Because I'm not sure quite how long this presentation might go for. I mean, it could be, what, anywhere 30 minutes to an hour or something like that, but that's possibly.
I know we changed to remove one of the meeting. We could consider adding another meeting also at one point if there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, and that's what I'm asking. Do you want to do this like as a separate special meeting, or would you rather just have a really long regular meeting?
I personally like smaller meetings, so, but if we need to, I'll stay late. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I also like the smaller meetings. It helps us kind of focus on specific topics. So
I prefer a smaller meeting.
So are you suggesting we have, so if we did a special meeting in September, would you be able to, it wouldn't just be for that, we'd have other topics? I guess that's my question. I don't want to have a special meeting just for that. That's an added expense in staff time that I don't want to burden you with. So
we'd be okay with that because I also like the smaller meetings too. It's actually a lot easier.
So there are items that we could put on that and on a meeting, a special meeting that first Wednesday in September, and then.
Yeah, I could poll to make sure, see if everybody, what people's schedule looks like, and if that one's available, we could do that. And I could actually, if we want, we could add the tree canopy assessment to that meeting as well. So if you want to have a multiple thing, we could actually, instead of doing that in the September, I could actually just give that to you at this meeting as well. Kind of fits together with the green code, so. Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, let's,
Yeah, I kind of did some informal reaching out to a couple developers that I know, asking them about the LEED procedure and how they view it and how it affects them. It by no means is a very wide poll that I did, so I would be curious in balancing, and I'm very interested in this presentation, but I'd also like to hear the other side of that coin and understand how this affects the developer and how they approach it and what it does to their projects, how they view it, their costs, that type of thing. Is that possible in the context that we're talking?
So this isn't a work program item, so all that's going to be happening is a presentation. If you'd like to have additional future presentations on green that could include some of these other things, I mean, that is certainly, if the commission wants to do that, we can look to set some of those things up. I wouldn't necessarily try to put all these into one meeting. Like I said, this is just kind of an introduction, but it's not part of your work plan, so you're not really digging in or making any recommendations. It's more just for your education right now. But we could also, if we want to, we could look into some future meetings to do some of that kind of stuff as well.
Okay, so let's look at having a special meeting in September, poll the commissioners to find out availability, and then we'll set that. With that, do you have anything else in your reports, Commissioner Duchesneau? Anything else?
Sure. I have three things. I attended as a citizen, the Bala City Council last week or the week before, and there's a good presentation by the representative of Sound Transit. Two very informative, I think that impacts us in Woodinville was they mentioned that now they are, they haven't adopted, but they were going to propose adoption by the board of the Brickyard parking right being moved to the center lane of 4-5. And that is concerning the BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, up, down Linwood. And that would be, I use 311 pretty much every day, or 252, but that's like Brickyard 160th, and that helps a lot, transit there. The other one was also, they mentioned, and staff could follow up, the BRT, that was north-south, but east-west, going from Shoreline all the way to Bothell, with half of them going to Woodinville. That was the agreement. They mentioned something about now all of them going all the way to 4-5. Now, I didn't catch the gentleman before he left, so I'd be curious if that also goes to Woodinville. But there's some movement on the BRT project, and it'd be good to follow up. I found it very informative, selfishly because I take the bus, but also a lot of people, it's useful. The second thing, by chance, I helped out again at the Pro event, seeing Commissioner Miza and Sadler tired after many hours in the sun, so I enjoyed with them. And third, Celebrate Woodinville was really fun. I participated. I commend the city and the chamber and all those that help. I was in the 5K run. I truly recommend. Pancake, where I heard some commissioner were flipping some pancakes, so that was also very fun. At the fire, and I was in the parade. That was fun. I got the most important day of the parade. I got to meet Blanco, the most famous person of Woodinville, so that was interesting. And the activities after Wilmot Park. So thank you, anyone who participated, and I hope people participated and will participate next year. Thank you. That's it.
And my only report is, as Commissioner Duchatel pointed out, was fortunate enough to participate in the Pro Plan outreach at Celebrate Woodinville, and I'm anxious to see how many dots are on each of those pictures, and that was a lot of fun and great fun, and thanks, Roxy, for being there all day. With that, there being no further business before the Planning Commission, we are adjourned.